Hello. In this week of remembrance, we're at a former RAF base, which is now an impressive museum.
We're here to honour bravery both on the battlefield and on the home front.
The people over the next 5 days, I'll be exploring some of the treasures here. On today's programme, the war at sea. Imperial War Museum, Duxford. Now, it takes a special kind of bravery to head out to sea in times of war, but naval battles have long played a crucial role in safeguarding our nation.
Britain's naval superiority has been tested many times over the years, but never more so than in the Second World War.
Our special guest today knows all about that. His father was in the Royal Navy. He is Cy King from the Hairy Bikers. Thank you very much for joining us. Lovely to see you. Now, your father, he died when you were, what, just 8 years old?
Yes.
But what he did during World War II has really had quite an influence on you, on how you've turned out.
Oddly, it has. Yes, Dad was on the Russian convoys among other sorties of war at sea, but he was incredibly well travelled, obviously, and he used to bring really odd ingredients back from whichever port he was in and write them down about how he'd eaten them and how he'd, and he'd bring them home to Mum. And bear in mind, Mum was a fantastic cook, but she was a cook that facilitated miners' shifts, in a pit village on the top of a County Durham hill. So he'd bring stuff like star anise, and I mean, that's in the late, that's in the 40s, nuts. So by the time I popped out, because I was the youngest of three, we had this amazing cuisine, and all our neighbours kind of complaining that what was coming out in my mum's kitchen was stunk. So there was all this kind of. So yeah, no, Dad had an enormous influence.
And he was a biker of sorts too.
He was, yeah, because he was injured sadly during the Russian convoys, and he was put on dispatch to run between these land-based areas for the Royal Navy. So. Motorcyclist, loved food by default. So that's the legacy that he's left me. I'm pretty fond of him. I didn't know him that well, but I'll keep every now and then I'll go, thanks very much, Dad. Yeah, you did as well there.
So your dad was part of the Russian convoys, the Arctic convoys. That was an incredibly gruelling and dangerous operation to be part of.
It was beyond comprehension. You're under extreme pressure because you had the wolf packs, the German wolf packs and submarines that you couldn't see. So there was just this atmosphere of anxiety constantly, plus the cold, plus not particularly that warm clothing. And, that takes a pretty special type of person, I think. And it was, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to honour all of those men, really, because I think about them a lot.
We'll be hearing plenty more about your father later on, but first let's hear more about those Arctic convoys.
The convoys were a vital lifeline for our allies in Russia, but the seamen involved had to contend with weather conditions beyond our imagination and the ever-present risk of attack.
Austin again later in the programme when he's reunited with an old shipmate. But Cy, good luck, prayers and a determination to live. That's what he said you needed. I mean, incredible to think your father went through something like that.
It's maybe quite emotional, that clip. No, I'm very proud of my dad. Very proud of him. I'm very proud of what he did. And all the men. They were an incredible breed.
And one of the real issues there was the cold was almost as big a danger, if not a bigger danger, than attack from the enemy.
I think that was an overwhelming thing that Dad used to talk about was the cold, chipping frozen salt water off the bulwark of the ship, because if you didn't, it would become too top heavy and topple over. I can't imagine that cold.
No. We have a bit of a surprise for you, actually. In 2012, the Arctic Star was introduced, a medal for those who had taken part in the Arctic convoys. The first medals were awarded in 2013, and Air Commodore Chris Bray is here, and he will explain why.
Very nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you, sir. Well, Cy, I'm here on behalf of the Ministry of Defence and the nation to present you the Arctic Star for your father's service on the Arctic convoys.
Thank you very, very much indeed.
That means a huge amount to my family. Thank you.
Well, you've succeeded in getting a huge lump in my throat.
I told you.
Wow. Thank you very, very much indeed.
My pleasure.
It was a long campaign, wasn't it?
The Battle of the Barents Sea was a particular part of the Arctic Convoy War, if you like, the mini-war. And your father, Graham, was serving on HMS Sheffield.
Yes, he was, yes.
During that battle. And it was a very important battle because Russia was fighting the Germans at Stalingrad. It was very important that the particular convoy got through.
Yes.
And that was the convoy that your father was on. Sadly, your father's not
No.
hasn't survived to
Oh,
be
yeah.
awarded the medal, but I'm very grateful that, you know, we can get you here today to award you the medal. Only a few people now have that medal.
Well, I'm incredibly touched, and I know my brother, my sister, and all of my family will be. I'm lost for words, really. I'm incredibly touched, thank you so much, and this is a legacy I'll leave my sons.
Absolutely.
As my father did for me, thank you.
The armed forces are well known for their heroics in wartime, but they also play a crucial role closer to home. Right now, up and down the country, military helicopter crews are standing by to help those in distress.
For more than 50 years, those teams have been run by the RAF and the Royal Navy, but the UK's search and rescue services are being privatised. To mark the end of the military's involvement, we've been looking at the valuable role they play. Flying boat, and it was nicknamed the Porcupine by the Germans because of all the guns sticking out of it. Well, with me here is Carl Warner, who's a historian at the museum. It's extraordinary in here, and it's also so tinny, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's got to be built to be light, so you don't want huge chunks of metal in here.
What role did the Sunderland play?
The Sunderland, as a flying boat, was part of RAF Coastal Command, so that's the part of the RAF that's responsible for guarding essentially the sea lanes that are coming into the UK and, of course, all over the world in the British Empire. Particularly in the Second World War, of course, its most important role was during the Battle of the Atlantic, when it was a submarine hunter. So Sunderlands would be flying for huge swathes of the ocean looking for submarines, and when they found them, they would attack them with depth charges, bombs, and, of course, their machine guns.
If it was being used to attack submarines from above, why did it need to be like a boat as well? Why did it need to be able to land on the water?
Well, the other important role that it had was as an air-sea rescue craft. Sunderland's rescued crews of ships. They rescued downed airmen, so airmen from other aircraft that parachuted into the sea. And, of course, they had to get onto the ocean in order to do that.
And it really does, when you're in it, it really does feel like you're in a boat, doesn't it? I mean, you've got your kitchen here, which obviously was packed away. Can we go and have a look down here? Because the size, you can't really appreciate the size from in here. It feels very cramped. I mean, the noises when you're just walking through here are extraordinary. What it must have been like, though, to be flying here, be flying up in the air.
Yeah, cold, deafening. The crews, there were a 10-men crew, usually. Could be even more people if they'd rescued some downed airmen or some sailors. And they very much thought of themselves almost like the crew of a ship as much as the crew of an aircraft, because they were up for so long. One Sunderland captain said that they had three enemies: the weather, the sea, and the Germans, and it was in that order. And so it's quite an environment to fly and fight in, let alone be up there for that long.
Amazing to have this flying boat on show here at Duxford. How did it come to be here?
It's got one of the more interesting acquisition stories in that after it was in RAF service, it was with the French Armed Forces. And then it was actually beached in France and used as a bar/nightclub.
A nightclub?
So, yeah, so all of this fit was taken out to make room for the bar, to make room for all the accoutrements of the bar. And then, of course, after that, when the bar closed, it was brought to the Imperial War Museum.
Well, they must have had some good parties in here. Lovely to see it. Thank you very much for showing us around during the war.
To be very honest, he didn't talk to me very much. And I think as well, Sophie, they were a stoic kind of generation. And they didn't, because they just got on with it.
And what happened during that time clearly has fascinated you. And you went very recently, didn't you, just this year? You went to one of the Nazi death camps to Treblinka.
I did.
And that was for Northern Exposure, your Hairy Bikers film.
Yes, Dave and I went to there as a mark of respect, really.
Well, let's have a look, because we've got a clip from that programme. I mean, it's unthinkable what happened there, isn't it? But it really clearly had a huge impact on you going there.
It did. It had a huge impact on us both. I think Dave and I haven't spoken about it since. We're constantly astounded at man's inhumanity to man. We have a responsibility to learn from history. As we move forward with our existences and our civilizations, we have a responsibility to look back and to remember. not just to remember our dead, but to remember the society that they were fighting against and fighting for.
And there you are now today with your dad's Arctic Star Medal, newly received. I mean, it must reinforce what your father did, his part in the war, and why he was fighting it. There
comes a particular time in anybody's life that has lost somebody, a parent, or where they reflect and what they did, and becomes incredibly important. And this is an incredible legacy that Dad has left.
Well, Si, thank you so much
for
coming to talk to us today.
My greatest pleasure. Thank you, Sophie.
Now, although Duxford is well known as a former RAF base, in its role as a museum, it includes hundreds of exhibits relating to the war at sea. Now, earlier in the programme, we heard from Austin Byrne about his experience on the Arctic convoys. Today, there are very few survivors of the treacherous crossings left, but we managed to track down one of Austin's old shipmates, and this is what happened. Well, that's almost it from us for this morning, but we're joined now by the choir from the Duke of York's Royal Military School in Dover. Rachel, you're 15 years old. Tell us about the school.
We have students from military backgrounds and students from families who aren't from military.
So lots of your parents, your fathers, your mothers are in the armed forces?
Yes.
So what are you going to sing for us today?
We're going to sing Soldier, Soldier. It was written by a local Kent woman. She sent the words to the school and we composed the music, and yeah.
Well, good luck. We'll leave you to it. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much to the Duke of York's Royal Military School. That is it for today's programme. Si, it's been wonderful having you with us, telling us all about your father and, of course, your new medal.
Yes, thank you.
Coming up on tomorrow's programme.
But from all of us here at the Imperial War Museum in Duxford, goodbye.
Goodbye.